Andla kwati ukuthi nabangatimisela banalo lithuba lekuthi badlalele ikhethelelo lesive lekhilikithi.
I was batting there and I really like it. It's very fun. It's a talented sport. I was doing wicketkeeper also.
I want to be in the national team and be the good batter, I think, the best one.
You can throw balls for practice and in the future I hope to play for the South African team.
Inhlangano ledlalisa umdlalo wekhilikithi eSwatini ithi nanayo itimisele kubambisa tonke tikole tahlukahlukene kuleli litawukhombisa intshisekelo yokuba nebadlali labatawudlala lo mdlalo. Umbiko ohlanganiswe ngilingithini Gule ngina Fabrice Msonera Sembabane.
Ngaledoda imidlalo sathepeza indzaba tethu lamhla ekuseni yaseselkhefu nasibuya sidabe sikhuluma kabanti ngesifo setinso asinjini simo sedulu.
Why should we pay our TV license?
The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break and we'll give you more of Missed Fee.
Pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who pays for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and a gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini Mobile Imali. Any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry.
Good morning and welcome back. Sikuvusele nawe losonza kusivulela lo mhla ehlelweni Kusile breakfast show namhla sidabe nje sibuka tindzaba tetempilo. Sawucala ngikhuluma ngendzaba yesifo setinso nje plakhumula ukuthi umhlaba wonke kanye nahulumende walapha ekhaya eSwatini evikini leliphelile bokupha lona lilanga lekwanzisa lwati ngaso lesifo. Nasibuka nje umbiko losuka khona enhlanganweni kaMhlaba yetempilo yaveta ukuthi eveni laseMelika abantu labadzala labanesifo setinso bangu 37 million lekulinganiselwa kubantu labangu 15% khona eveni laseMelika. Sifuna ukuvake ukuthi lapha ekhaya eSwatini ingabe simo sikanjani. Sitakhulumisana namake amakhosazana masilela lolilunga lenhlangano ye-Chronic Kidney Disease Support Foundation. Inhlangano ke lena lezama nje kufundzisa sive semaswati ngaso sifo setinso. Sidakhumela ukuthi nasembikweni lophumile lapha etindzabeni evikini liphelile uvetile ukuthi abantu lapha ekhaya eSwatini labaya for i-dialysis labageza tinso balinganiselwa ku 230. Kepha-ke sitatiteka kabanti naye make khosi lesovele sokhona lapha e-studio. Sikuvusele make masilela saba ngokuthi ube nathi lo mhla ehlelweni sita ukhuluma naye indzaba lebaluleke kakhulu ngalokho sivele isifo setinso siyinkinga kakhulu emhlabeni wonke kungasiko nje lapha ekhaya eSwatini kuphela njengoba sengivedile nje tinombolo taseMelika ukuthi bantu bangu 37 million labalashelwa sona sifo setinso. Kuma singangeni nje ngidoti inombolo lapha Eswatini kuva kabanti nje ukuthi nine nebobani ninhlangano ningemalunga lamangaki nje chronic kidney disease support foundation.
Ngibingelele babukele kusena emakhaya. Ngiyabonga Mthombeni. Eswatini mina ngimake Makhosazana njengoba somethulile. Ngisuka ku foundation lebitwa ngokuthi Chronic Kidney Disease Support Foundation. Lapho khona sinemalunga lasihlanu bese sesiba na CEO wethu lo wesithupha kule foundation.
Nisungula nini nje le foundation nisungulelani futhi yini leti zafu mhlambe letani bocelela ukuthi nibone lokuthi cha vele imcoka le foundation asibe nayo?
I-foundation sisungula kuqala kwayo kuregister it was 2017. Sibuka tinombolo tebantu Eswatini tiyange kuyatenyuka labaphethwe isifo setinso. Sibaba sesiyabuka kune tingcinamba labahlangana nato batholakala ukuthi sebayagula sebalinyalelwe itinso tabo ade sakhona ukusebenza ngendlela etibekeke ngayo. So sabona ke ukuthi kumele ukuthi njenge organization sikhone kuhlangabetana naleti nkinga tabo kubuka ngoba sakhanza silabanendi babo lokugula kubabamba bangadelele bangadi nalokuthi letinso tabo setinenkinga. Labanye ukhanze sibe basebenda sebatawulahlekelwa ngumsebenzi ngenxa yendlela lolashwa ngayo uma sophethwe tinso.
Ingavele mhlambe njengoba usho nje ukuthi vele labanye basuke bangathi babona sekulesi lokuthi vele banaso lesifo. Sibona ngani ukuthi mhlambe lesifo sasivele sengivele naso la emtimbeni nani isani nje ecala nje lenganginiketa nje clue ukuthi senekwendeka vele nginaso lesifo setinso.
Kude lengathi luphawu loluconze ngqo ukuthi nyalo sona inkinga yesifo setinso. Etinso tikuhlasela lokubhlungu ngathi ukuthi kude lubhlungu lotawubuva. Labanendi bantu abathi nalosithi kuphinja emtimbeni wabo tinso. So letimpawu tiqhamuka tifana nalokunye kugula lokukhona. Kodwa kune bantu labatsite lababa sengotini. So kuze kubonakale ukuthi vele sonenkinga yaletinso. Kufuna ukuthi usitakala ngekuthi ube sesibhedlela kupopolwe ingati yakho kubonakala setinswayi atisakhona ukuphuma etinsweni. Otherwise ukuthi nje ungathi umvu ahamba atihambela umbona silona ke sonenkinga yetinso kulukhuni kumbona naye futhi kulukhuni ukuthi aze athi phande vele apopole kwendiwe ema test lathide.
Ngoba nini vele nje make masilela vele nibuke tona letintsaba leti tebantu labaphila nalesifo lesi kumbe nasibuka nje simo sale sifo lapha eSwatini singanani nje bangake abantu labanaso lunganani lolwati lolukhona la ngephandle isiveni umnganani nje umsebenzi lekumele wendiwe ukuze abantu baze basadi kangcono.
Mkhulu umsebenzi kakhulu sive semaswati sisengakadi kahle ngoba kuthi uma kwendeka umuntu ukhanza ukuthi itinso takhe atisasebenzi kahle ukhanza ukuthi kunetinswayi letithite letingasaphumi letihamba thambe diphazamise nekusebenza kwengqondo. So labanendi ukhanza ukuthi batakuthatha babuyetse engcenye kusintu bamthathe umuntu bamise ekulashweni ngesintu njengamaswati kani sebenda kuba worse lesimo. Tinombolo lesinato laSwatini bakhona labagula kubanendi kakhulu mane basengakafiki lapho khona sebelashwa lendawo sipheceleti ngesilumbi sebenda bo hemodialysis ngoba kwanyalo eSwatini timbili tindlela lesinato sekwelapha sifo setinso. Kunehlobo lesibita ukuthi ihemodialysis lapho khona kumele uye emshinini ukhona ukuthi umshini bese ukukhiphela kungcola lengabe tinso takho tiyakukhipha kube betiphilile tisebenta kahle. Kuphindze futhi kube nalenye indlela lapho khona kwendiwa lekuthiwa yi-peritoneal dialysis. Lapho ke ukhanza ukuthi ulasha ungakhona kuba sekhaya kodwa lokungenani kufuna ute esibhedlela kanye ngenyanga. Laba labalashwa ke ngemshini ihemodialysis bona kumele ukuthi lokungenani beteka 3 bakhona la beteka 3 ngeliviki kukhona la beteka 2 labanye ke beta kanye ngenxa ye space njengoba ngisho ukuthi inombolo setisetulu kwanyalo nje lesinabo labenda ihemodialysis eSwatini bang 298 lese basemshinini belashwa ngemshini bese kuthi labangu 34 bona ke benda lelonye hlobo lengilibite ngokuthi peritoneal dialysis labakhona ukuthi bafundziswe bese sebayakhona ukukhipha inswayi emtimbeni basemakhaya.
Okay, sisakhuluma kanje le dialysis i-procedure lena lesathe isikhathi esinganani kusuke kwentiwani nje kahle kahle ngibonile nje tindzabeni evikini eliphelile kube itinto selite futhi interview nje lomunye ayichaza lembo lokuthi vele labanye ukhanze ukuthi sebalahlekelwe imisebenzi ukuthi njengoba ucetha chaza nje ukuthi kumele baye esibhedlela kabili kathathu ngeliviki yini kahle kahle lena lesuke yendiwe ngoba kusuke ufaka i-drip yini kahle kahle lena lesuke yendiwe la emtimbeni wakho
emtimbeni wemuntu losa linyalelwe tinso tingasasebenzi kahle kusuke kukhishwa letinswayi so letinswayi tigicika kanye nengadi yakho la emthanjeni yakho mawuthinta nje indzaba ye drip umthombeni vele kubukeka ungathi drip but lokwendako umshini uba semshinini for 4 hours so kulo 4 hours lo semshinini ngaye umshini kukhokhwa linani lelitsite lengadi emtimbeni walomuntu igcike ihambe la mshinini bese lo mshini wona so yakhona ukuthi udvonse ngemithi letsite lekhona lefakiwe la kulo mshini udvonse letinswayi tinso leti tingasakhona ukuthi kube betisebenta kahle ngabe tiyadikhiphela mane emagama ato asingisa athe pheceleti lengabekisa ukuthi kunabo creatinine kunabo potassium letinye taletinswayi vele tinswayi letitsingekile emtimbeni mane maselinani lato tisetulu setinebungoti tsite so sekumele ukuthi lelinani lato tibe regulated so ke lo mshini uyasita kukhipha loto tinswayi uthi ukwenda lokho uphinze futhi usite lo mshini ukuthi kukhone kuthi linani labo BP uma bese isetulu ikhona ukuregulateka nayo ibuyele ibe sesimeni lesibhekekile ngoba ukhanza ukuthi njengoba ngishide ukuthi kunelihlobo thite lebantu labanenkinga labasengodini yokuthi babe nekulinyalelwa tinso labafaka ekhathi bantu labagula ngeBP ihypertension isilungu noma labanesifo sashukela lesibita ngediabetes mellitus noma ke labanabo HIV and AIDS nakhona basengodini labo bantu labo lesetule ukuthi tinso dabo thambe dibalemalele
lokusho ukuthi vele lokhu kumele ukwende vele impilo yakho yonke lokhu umuntu le dialysis noma mhlambe khamba isikhathi la ubuye khona so ungcono songasayithengi
emthombeni kwanyalo laSwatini sina labancane lokhu kusida ukuphuma enkingeni yetinso kuthi encenye udonatelwe inso uthola umuntu lodakupha inso yakhe kufuneka lo muntu lo kube ngumuntu lode kugula lokuthide lalashelwa kona futhi kube ngumuntu lodawukhanza ukuthi niyafanana noma nitihlobo angisho njalo yes uma kwendiwa lucwaningo thide lesibita ngabo tissue typing ngalesi medical khanzakala ukuthi uyakhona bona sicha lona angayitfola inso yakho umnikete yona otherwise kulashe kuba la mshineni uba semshinini until vele uthole lo dokudonatela ngalenso or else ke ngalothi ke yini libangilesi letinso takho dilimali angibekise nje uma ngabe bosudelwe imbuzilwane waba nesifo samalala eveva uyendeka dilimali tinso takho ukhanze ukuthi sothi ngalomshini lapho kodwa unalo litfoba lekuthi once kwaphuma lobuthi balembuzilwane diyalunga tinso diyabuyela tisebenta kahle uyakhona ukuthi uyekele ihemodialysis
okay
bese sekuthi lokunye kufa lengubalile lokunjengalokugula ngashukela noma ihypertension kona akudilimati masinyane letinso thatha isikhathi eside solo nje tinso kancane diyalimalela by the time kubonakala ukhanze ukuthi access irreversible. Le tinso setifike esigabeni la sethi khona diku end stage. End stage renal failure. So vele sekude reverse. Lesekudakusida kuthi ungene emshinini udialyze noma ke ekhambeni kwesikhathi uthole loyo lokupha inso.
Okay. Kubuda nje mayimaselele ukuthi kukhona yini mhlawumbe lusito leni lu provider ko leni provider bamfla laba sanza kutfola lokuthi banale sifo because labanye ukhanze ukuthi baba in denial babe solo baphika ukuthi hayi ngeke mina ngihambe ngiyohlala kule machine 4 hours 3 times a week. Yabo labanye kubathatha isikhathi lokuthi bemukele vele lokuthi kumele sala bahamba bayohlala kule machine. Niyabanikeza yini lusito mhlawumbe le counseling nibakhulumise nibachazele ukuthi cha akusiku ukuthi mhlawumbe sowuyafa but kuthenga ukuthi uvele usuku uhambe uthola lo lusito kukhona yini indlela nibasetangato talelo hlobo.
Bayasitakala bayafundziswa ngoba uma abenenhlanhla lo muntu kwabonakala ukuthi itinso takhe tinenkinga uyakhona ukuthi achushiswe ikakhulukazi nangekudla ngoba letinye taletinswayi vele titfolakala ekudleni. So lo mfu loyo once watfolakala sesiyakhona ukuthi simchushise sithi kunekudla thide lekumele angasakudli. And then sichubeke asabona eclinic. By the time maybe sekukhanzakala ukuthi vele setifike ekugcineni ngekulimala usuka atitfolile letifundo alungiselele lokulukhuni nje kuba ngilesimo ngoba eqinisweni kwelaphisa tinso kudulile. Kubita abantu basuke emakhaya bahamba indlela lenzela abanye tindzawo letinze basuke kumbe bolomahasha bomathamo kanti tindzawo la gezwa khona tinso nje Eswatini tinzathu kuphela kunasembabane kunase RFM kanye nakaHlatsi. So labantu akusibo nje bamlo one labasuke balungiselele angibekise nje mthombe kube bengathiwa ngisuke emathamo angivakashe embabane kathathu ngeliveki ngeke ngakhona. Manje ke kulaba betinso kukakhulu kumatima ngoba usuke sakaphathekile ngalesikhathi akakhona ekhamba yedwa lendlela lenza singakusekelwa bemndeni bamphekeletele netikhathi labangena ngato njengoba ngisho sithi inombolo disedulo mbabane nje ayedwa una 206 webamvu laba on dialysis. Imishini lekhona embabane in 25 kuphela. So labantu batitfola bahlala ema-awala amathi kazi sibasuka engcenye ekuseni uyawuse angene ebusuku emshinini solo ubambe line kuze athole space sekungena emshinini njengoba ngishilo ukuthi i-treatment lethatha 4 hours lena and then kulungiselela nje shothi umuntu roughly kufuna abe nayo 6 hours.
Okay. So ngaphandle nje kwaloko lokubalile lokuthi mhlambe abantu labanashukela noma hypertension noma HIV and AIDS nabo basengodini yekuba nesifo setinso kumbe mhlambe ukuva lokuthi ngitiplete ama risk factors mhlambe letinye imfundo letingabanga ukuthi khanza sona lesifo mhlambe indlela lesiphila ngayo ukudla lesikudlako because tinso vele ikakhulu kade nje tshwala neligwayi afetha kakhulu vele tinso ingabe vele mhlambe ngitiplete imfundo ngakhanza ukuthi vele setingabanga ukuthi khanza sogula ngalesifo
njengoba sotibalile emthombeni uteka yona ngempela. Indlela abantu labaphila ngayo iyasifaka sandla lokufaka ekhathi lokunye ukhanza ukuthi umuntu udedayita kuthenga emaphilisi nje kakhulu kade nangebhlungu ngoba wona akadzini prescription esibhedlela uyangena nje ekhemisi soyathenga lawo maphilisi akho boPanado. iPanado siyathi yelapha vele yakusida mawuphethwe inhloko labanye bathenga lamanye boBrufen bodiclofenac emaphilisi lango ayinkinga noma ayingoti uma uwanatha ungaka prescribelwa ngokuthi nje sovaplung soyadithengela sinoma kanjani ahambe adilimate tinso. Labanye ke ukhanze ukuthi bantu laba obese nama labanemtimba omkhulu khambe kaze tinso atisakhoni kusebenza kahle kumkhukhalo mvuthiswa ngekuthi sisindlo sesisetulo dona atikhuli le size yato nje igcina ingileyo lengiyo kanti sekufuna so basengodini bami labangashukumisi umtimba nato ke letitsakamiva yasifaka sandla kakhulu ukuthi bantu balinyalele tenso.
Ngoba nje asibuka mhlambe iminyaka kungaba abantu labaneminyaka lenganani nokuva nje ukuthi ngabe vele kuvame ukuthi lesifo sithole bamfu besilisa noma besifazane.
Dinombolo tethu tikhombisa ukuthi banendana besilisa kunebesifazane. Lokho kwentiwa ukuthi ukhanza ukuthi bantu besilisa singemaswati bayathanza ukuthi sebayate lapha ngoba netimbita tiyalimata tenso sebasebenzisa imithi yesintu leti tikale ticacile sebayalimalelwa tenso tabo labo bantu labo. Bese kuthi iminyaka all ages are affected, but mainly lesibonako Eswatini bantu labasha bayanza kanti masicala lesifo sisibona kukhanza bekuba mlaba sebakhulile ukhanze ukuthi bana labo high bana labo shukela so sebagcina ke tinso tabo setiyabalimalela nyalo. We have all ages labancane ngoba kuyenteka umuntu atalwe tinso takhe vele atalwe anekukhubateka so lokho ngikuhamba kwesikhathi kugcina kubonakele as avakashela emtholampilo noma esibhedlela ukuthi no tinso takhe tinenkinga sebayangena ke nabo babalelwa kulesifo setinso. Nginathi from middle age sinabo nebantu abesikolo labafundzako but nje middle age or middle adulthood nabo tinombolo tabo tinende kakhulu
nabo bantu abesikolo bayonda dialysis
bayayenda lapha.
Okay. Lokhu kuva nje mhlambe sesiya ngasemaphethelweni nje make ingabe vele mhlambe sihlola kanjani ke sihlolela kanjani ke lesifo lesi kuhlola nje ukuthi ngabe vele nginaso noma benda kanjani emtholampilo kuthathwa ingadi ithini procedure ehlola sona lesifo.
Procedure ifaka ekhathi kuthathwa kwengadi kwendiwa kwabo scan kubukakale ukuthi tinso takho kanjani lengadi yona ithwele kanganani letinswayi njengoba ngisho ukuthi letinswayi itholakala khona la engadini.
Okay, kodwa nje nitfolakala kanjani nje ne foundation kumbe umuntu nakafisa ukuva kabandi noma nje ukuthola leyo counseling.
Si foundation sikhona sila Eswatini emalunga ethu njengoba ngisho sasihlanu kwanyalo sisancile ama office na Channel S engoyoyo kodwa ke sinato dinombolo. Yes, detincingo siyatholakala nakuto semkhankasweni ukuphuma siye emangweni siye esiveni sisifundzise sive.
Okay, ngiyeva sibakhuluma ke masilela kuba nathi ngibele sethemba ukuthi sofundzile lokho nje lokuncane ngaso sifo setinso njengoba sekachazile lapha make masilela ukuthi sifo lesingode kakhulu kubalekile ukuthi sitibuke timfo lesitidlako sitibuke timfo lesitinathako phindze siyibuke nje nempilo lesiyiphilako kodwa sitawukhona kuphepha ngiso lesifo yavedeke ukuthi basatawuphuma baphuma umkhankaso wekufundzisa sive samaswati ngaso sifo setinso asiphathelete makethe Spain traffic update.
Lesi sikhathi lapho khona emaphoyisa agubha kuba khona kwawo even. Kulapho kukhuthathwa khona sive ukuthi sike sihlale phansi sibuke bomcoka bemaphoyisa empilweni yabantu. Siphindze sibuke indlela letinsha tekuphepha kubo bonke bucala lobuveta sihloko. Sive sakangwane siyakhunjutwa ukuthi singawafaki emaphoyisa etinkulumeni tepolitiki ngoba liphoyisa alingeni futhi alingenelani nepolitiki. Emaphoyisa alwa nebucala netingoti temgwaco kuphela nje. Ingako emaphoyisa athi wonke umuntu eveni akahlale ngaphandle kwekunceneka ukuthi angahle ahlaselwe tilwane tasendle. Umuntu lohlala eSwatini akatiphilele atisebentele ngaphandle kwekwesaba kuhlaselwa kwemucwa nekucekelwa phansi kwempahla yakhe. Nawe wena lophathekile, emaphoyisa athi digulele kahle uze uphile ngaphandle kwekuphatamiseka. Lokungenteka ngekuthi tidlova tingene tihlasele labo labakunakekelako kuleyo ndlu. Sive lesihlakaniphile nguleso lesiphakamisa kusebenta kwemaphoyisa nabo bonke labalwa nebucala. Ngale kwaloko timbungushe tiyawuwangenela emazinyane kungenamuntu ekhaya. Lo mlayeto niulethelwa ngemaphoyisa embube abambisene nomsakato wetithombe.
Welcome back. It's 5 minutes before 7. Lesikhathi yasibuka isimo semgwaqo na Constable Ntembendle asivusele fakuthi ngabe isimo semgwaqo sikanjani namhla ekseni. Asivusele Constable, ingabe kuhambeka kanjani lo mhla emigwaqweni? Kwangathi sahluleka-ke ukuxhumana naye Constable Ntembendle, sicebise kakhulu ngaloku aseselikhefu sidawube sizochubeka nehlelo.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Using an ATM is a simple process. You simply insert your card, punch in your PIN, and withdraw your cash. However, this simple process can open up you and your finances to some dangers. So it is very important that you proceed with caution when using the ATM and never share your PIN. When approaching the ATM, it is very important that you have your card ready, either in your hand or in your pocket, so that you do not waste time going through your belongings, either your wallet or your handbag, as this will give opportunities for thieves to act. Thirdly, put your money away immediately. Don't give anyone an opportunity to grab your cash or your card after a withdrawal. Lastly, always take your receipt after each and every transaction. It is important that you get your slip after every transaction because it contains crucial information about your balances, and that may lead you to be a victim of bolandela. Be cyber aware, be cyber smart.
Good morning and welcome back. It's 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at international news. A Russian delegation at talks with senior UN officials said on Monday that Moscow is ready to accept an extension to a grain export deal that has helped bring down global food prices amid the war in Ukraine, but only for 60 days as the Kremlin holds out for changes to how the arrangement is working.
After hours of talks, Russia's deputy foreign minister leaves the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. On the table was the vital deal that allows the safe export of grains from Ukraine's blockaded Black Sea ports, to which Moscow says a renewal is possible.
Russia does not object to another extension of the Black Sea Initiative after its second term expires on March 18th, but only for 60 days. Our further stance will be determined upon tangible progress on normalization of our agricultural exports, not in words, but in deeds.
This extension, however, is half the term of its previous renewals, and Ukraine's Minister of Infrastructure says that this isn't long enough.
The Black Sea Grain Initiative involves at least 120 days of extension. Therefore, Russia's position to extend the deal only for 60 days contradicts the document signed by Turkey and the UN. We're waiting for the official position of the UN and Turkey as the guarantors of the initiative.
The UN and Turkey brokered initiative was first signed last July to establish a safe 4-month maritime corridor to and from Ukrainian ports. And it was seen as averting a global food crisis that threatens several countries due to blocked Russian and Ukrainian shipments. It was subsequently extended again last November for another 120 days, with its expiry date creeping up at the end of the week. As of this month, more than 23 million tons of grain had been exported under the initiative, and it remains to be seen whether the deal will face further extension on Saturday.
Russia on Monday began the closed-door trial of jailed opposition activist Vladimir Kara-Murza, who faces more than 2 decades in prison on charges including treason for comments critical of the Kremlin. His high-profile trial is the latest in a string of cases against opposition voices in Russia in a crackdown that has intensified since President Vladimir Putin deployed troops in Ukraine last year.
Having survived 2 poisonings, Vladimir Kara-Murza may be facing more than 2 decades in prison. As the opposition activist's trial began in Moscow, his lawyer said Russia had returned to Stalinist times.
This is undoubtedly a political matter and persecution of an opposition figure for his criticism. The behavior of today's court speaks volumes.
Kara-Murza is accused of high treason and spreading false information about the Russian army after he criticized Moscow at events abroad. Russia adopted a law criminalizing so-called false information about its military shortly after it rolled into Ukraine in February last year. Authorities have used the law to intensify their crackdown on dissent. The trial is the latest in a string of cases against opposition voices. Kara-Murza, who's a journalist, survived poisonings in 2015 and 2017 that he blamed on the Kremlin and which Russian officials deny. After the poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny in 2020, Kara-Murza talked to France 24.
I have absolutely no doubt that as soon as Alexei Navalny is physically able to, as soon as he comes back to good health, and I hope and pray that he does, that he will immediately resume his work and his opposition activity. Because the biggest gift that opponents of the Kremlin could give to Putin's regime is if we all gave up and ran, and this is not going to happen.
Navalny did indeed return to Russia, where he's currently serving a 9-year jail term on embezzlement charges, which are widely seen as political.
A Russian fighter jet struck the propeller of a U.S. military surveillance drone on Tuesday, causing the U.S. to crash the drone into the Black Sea, the Pentagon said. Russia denied striking the drone.
A high-altitude, high-risk intercept. The U.S. says it lost an MQ-9 drone on Tuesday when the craft's propeller was clipped by a Russian Su-27 fighter jet, causing the unmanned aircraft to crash into the Black Sea. The Pentagon says a pair of Su-27s had been harassing the U.S. drone in international airspace, dumping fuel on it and flying dangerously close. U.S. officials have called the collision a brazen violation of international law.
This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional. U.S. and allied aircraft will continue to operate in international airspace, and we call on the Russians to conduct themselves professionally and safely.
In a statement posted to Telegram, Russia denied its jet collided with the drone, instead claiming the MQ-9 lost control after a sharp maneuver. Moscow has previously expressed its displeasure with U.S. surveillance flights near the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia illegally annexed from Ukraine in 2014. U.S. and NATO officials say Russian intercepts over the Black Sea are common, citing a pattern of aggressive and dangerous actions by Russian pilots. Russia's invasion and NATO's assistance to Ukraine have raised fears of a direct confrontation between nuclear-armed states. Military analysts and NATO diplomats, though, say they don't expect Tuesday's incident to escalate.
Australia will buy 3 nuclear-powered attack submarines from the United States as part of a 3-nation multi-decade deal with Great Britain that is aimed at strengthening the allies' presence in the Asia-Pacific region as China grows bolder militarily.
President Joe Biden says the decision to share sensitive U.S. nuclear technology with Australia is a big deal and a necessary one. He spoke Monday in San Diego.
As we stand at the inflection point in history where the hard work of enhancing deterrence and promoting stability is going to affect the prospect of peace for decades to come, the United States can ask for no better partners in the Indo-Pacific, where so much of our shared future will be written. Forging this new partnership, we're showing again how democracies can deliver our own security and prosperity, and not just for us, but for the entire world.
The multi-decade deal will see American and British nuclear-powered submarines rotating into Australian waters as soon as 2027. By the early 2030s, Australia will buy at least 3, and as many as 5, American nuclear-powered conventionally armed submarines designed to hunt and attack other subs. And the 3 nations will work together to develop a new nuclear attack submarine, a project that could take 2 decades. Biden stressed the deal concerns nuclear propulsion, not arms, and the leaders pledged to adhere to their nuclear non-proliferation agreements. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the deal, which could cost nearly $150 billion, will create jobs and boost innovation and research.
The AUKUS agreement we confirm here in San Diego represents the biggest single investment in Australia's defence capability in all of our history, strengthening Australia's national security and stability in our region.
And British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also announced that his nation would increase military spending to 2.5% of their GDP to meet growing threats worldwide.
In the last 18 months, the challenges we face have only grown. Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, China's growing assertiveness, the destabilizing behavior of Iran and North Korea, all threaten to create a world defined by danger, disorder, and division. Faced with this new reality, it is more important than ever that we strengthen the resilience of our own countries.
Beijing has criticized the partnership and accuses Washington of provoking rivalry and confrontation. But analysts say China's aggression in the Pacific region prompted this decision.
This is really more a response to the very aggressive military buildup that China has had, as opposed to anything we're doing that would be provoking to China.
Because the 3 countries are democracies, there are vocal critics, and analysts expect legislators in all 3 nations to probe the terms of the deal as it evolves and question its impact on sovereignty issues and government spending.
There's criticism, as well there should be, of this deal everywhere, because that's how democracies do policy, right? The ambitions are really, really large, but they're also very large bets that are being placed.
And here's who they're betting against: the man who recently cemented his status as the most powerful leader China has had in decades. Can these 2 young nations meet that challenge alongside their former colonial master? AUKUS hopes so. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
China warned on Tuesday that Australia, Britain and the United States were treading a path of error and danger after they unveiled a nuclear-powered submarines deal. Australia announced on Monday it would buy up to 5 U.S. nuclear-powered submarines, then build a new model with U.S. and British technology under an ambitious plan to bulk up Western muscle across the Asia-Pacific in the face of a rising China.
It's a deal aimed squarely at China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. Australia teaming up with the U.S. and Britain to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. 5 to be delivered in the next decade, followed by a new class of submarines with British designs and American technology. On Tuesday, China's foreign ministry accused the 3 Western allies of inciting a new arms race.
The latest joint statement from the US, UK and Australia demonstrates that the 3 countries, for the sake of their own geopolitical interests, completely disregard the concerns of the international communities and are walking further and further down the path of error and danger.
On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden appeared alongside the prime ministers of Australia and Britain at a naval base in San Diego, where they hailed the so-called AUKUS partnership, an acronym of the 3 countries.
AUKUS has one overriding objective: to enhance the stability of the Indo-Pacific amid rapidly shifting global dynamics.
China wasn't alone in its criticism of the pact. Moscow also lashed back.
The Anglo-Saxon world, with the creation of structures like AUKUS and with the advancement of NATO military infrastructures into Asia, is making a serious bet on many years of confrontation.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said he didn't expect the deal would sour his country's relationship with China, while Australia's Defence Minister said AUKUS was necessary to counter the biggest conventional military buildup in the region since World War II.
President Joe Biden sought to reassure Americans over the country's banking system while insisting emergency measures would not be paid for by taxpayers as additional banks came under stress. SVB, a key lender to startups across the United States since the 1980s, collapsed after a sudden run on deposits, prompting regulators to seize control on Friday.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank represents the biggest test to the U.S. financial system since the 2008 crisis. And even as President Joe Biden tried to restore confidence in the American banking sector, he admitted there was need for tighter regulation.
I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again, and to protect American jobs and small businesses.
To prevent a repeat of the global financial crisis, Washington enacted the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010. The law imposed rules on how banks can invest and minimum requirements for liquid assets. It also established regulatory bodies to watch over the financial services industry. However, in 2018, under then-President Donald Trump, some Dodd-Frank regulations were weakened. Banks like SVB were in favor of this rollback, arguing that they weren't big enough to warrant oversight. The move allowed them to invest more of their deposits and make more money for executives and shareholders. Critics of deregulation are now having an I told you so moment, like Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, who said bank failures are the direct result of leaders in Washington weakening the financial rules. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has previously said she's in favor of beefing up the powers of regulatory bodies. However, Biden is facing a divided Congress, which could make passing tougher regulation laws difficult.
The Biden administration is approving a scaled-back version, Conocopolis, $7 billion oil and gas drilling project in Alaska, the U.S. Department of Interior said on Monday.
It's the largest proposed oil drilling project on U.S. public land in decades. Supporters say it will bring hundreds of jobs and billions of dollars in revenue to state and federal coffers. But some local voices and nationwide groups have raised concerns about its impact on the environment.
The decision to approve Willow is in direct conflict with the urgent need to transition the United States and the world off fossil fuels. The administration continues to give lip service to the desire to be strong on the climate and strong in protecting environmental justice. These projects don't do that. Instead, they take us in the wrong direction and undermine our ability to actually build a livable future we need.
On Sunday, the Biden administration had said it would bar or limit drilling in some other areas of Alaska and the Arctic Ocean, a move that some groups described as an attempt to sugarcoat Monday's decision to okay the Willow project. The project is located in Alaska's pristine western Arctic, in an area known as the National Petroleum Reserve. It will sit on the state's north slope, the largest tract of undisturbed public land in the U.S. Using the oil generated by the project would produce the equivalent of more than 239 million metric tons of greenhouse gases over 30 years. That's roughly equivalent to the combined emissions from 1.7 million passenger cars over the same time period. Still, though, there is widespread support in Alaska itself from across the political spectrum. One exception, though, is the mayor of Nuiqsut, whose city of around 500 people is closest to the proposed project. It could produce up to 180,000 barrels of oil per day, according to ConocoPhillips, the company behind the project. It had initially proposed 5 drilling sites. Only 3 were approved.
The City of Light is losing its luster with tons of garbage piling up on Paris sidewalks as sanitation workers strike for a 9th day. The creeping squalor is the most visible sign of widespread anger over a bill to raise the French retirement age by 2 years. Other French cities are also having garbage problems, but the mess in Paris, the showcase of France, has quickly become emblematic of strikers' discontent.
After a week of strikes by bin collectors, the rubbish is piling up on the streets of Paris, including in some tourist hotspots. Sights and smells that spoil the experience for those visiting.
I came for a romantic trip with my boyfriend to Paris, and yes, it spoils a little bit the charm of the city, the buildings and everything. The smell is very unpleasant when you go past and you have to step over. We went through streets where you had to slalom between the bins. It's not very nice.
The smell is really unpleasant when you want to eat, but also when you move around the city.
Not even the major shopping areas are spared. But frustrating as it might be, there are visitors who are understanding about the reasons behind the strike.
So we're having a lot of strikes in England as well, and even though it does spoil a lot of the view and the smell, I do support the strikes. Retirement and pay is important to a lot of people.
Of course, Paris without all the rubbish would be much prettier, more elegant. But we also understand life, the economy, social conflicts, misunderstandings, etc. Of course, we prefer Paris clean and beautiful as always.
With no sign of an agreement to bring the strike to an end, the French capital faces a major sanitary problem in the coming weeks, which threatens to spoil more holidays as springtime arrives.
6 people were confirmed dead on Monday and 31 others were still missing from a ferry disaster off the coast of Gabon as divers found the wreck and searched for more bodies, authorities said. The privately owned Esther Miracle went down in calm waters overnight on Wednesday to Thursday, carrying 161 passengers and crew from the capital Libreville to the oil town of Port Gentil.
Since last week's deadly shipwreck, Gabonese people have been paying their respects here, at the port of Libreville, where the boat took off with its 161 passengers. People are not only here to mourn the victims of the accident, but also to shed light on what happened.
My 4 children have still not been found, and the boat hasn't been examined yet. If they had looked inside the boat, they would at least have accurate information about what exactly was found.
Families are angry about the lack of information and the inefficiency of rescue services. They're desperate for their loved ones to be found.
We saw the condition of the bodies that had been found when they arrived yesterday, and they were in an indescribable state. Some people still have hope because miracles do happen, but many have lost hope of finding their loved ones alive.
On Sunday, the Gabonese Prime Minister visited the families of the victims. He assured them that the government is doing all it can to find those who are still missing. The ferry capsized on March the 9th. It was carrying passengers from the capital Libreville to an oil port further south.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting Ethiopia and Niger this week. In the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa, he will focus on implementing the peace deal from last November that ended hostilities in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region after a brutal 2-year conflict that left an estimated 500,000 civilians killed.
In January, Tigrayan rebel forces said they began handing over tanks and heavy weapons as part of a peace deal brokered last November to end the bloody conflict that broke out in late 2020 when Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed deployed the army in a bid to topple Tigrayan leaders. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is said to meet with Abiy in Addis Ababa Wednesday. One leading human rights advocate told VOA that Abiy is hoping to get economic aid and a pledge of normalized relations from Blinken, although the country is still not at peace.
I'm going to suggest that it's actually not a peace as such. There is a cessation of hostilities agreement, which has, in fact, brought some relief to the suffering of the people of Ethiopia, particularly in the north, in the Tigray region. So some aid can get through, communications are flowing, fuel prices are down, food prices are down. All of this is very positive. What I really want the United States government to know, however, is that it is not all sunshine and roses. There are still abuses happening throughout not just the Tigray region, but in other parts of the country.
Another senior human rights advocate agreed.
We are asking that Secretary Blinken really center all of his engagements with the government of Ethiopia around human rights. While we have seen an improvement in the situation in northern Tigray since the signing of the cessation of hostilities, there still needs to be improved access throughout the country for humanitarian actors and human rights monitors. We also still need to see more commitment on justice and accountability, and would really like for Secretary Blinken to push that.
Earlier this year, France and Germany's foreign ministers visited Ethiopia, reviewing stocks of humanitarian aid and holding talks with leaders. They called for establishing a transitional justice mechanism to punish human rights abuses committed during the conflict, saying there can be no reconciliation without accountability. Sarah Yeager told VOA she agrees.
Ethiopia has been backsliding on democracy and freedoms across the country, and abuses are still continuing in some of those same places where the worst suffering has happened. So we are seeing detentions, killings, sexual violence.
Despite unresolved issues, there is optimism. After the ceasefire agreement late last year, flights resumed for the first time in 18 months between Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan capital, Mekelle. A woman told reporters, "When you have peace, you have everything." Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Gathered, exhausted, these displaced people arrived here at the gates of Goma 6 months ago after fleeing the fighting between the Congolese army, armed groups, and the M23. They have all come to welcome the United Nations representatives visiting the Bushagara camp.
Exhausted, they all have come to welcome the United Nations representatives visiting the Bushagara camp. These displaced people arrived here at the gates of Goma 6 months ago after fleeing the fighting between the Congolese army, armed groups, and the M23. During its visit, the UN delegation encouraged the continuation of the Nairobi and Luanda peace processes to help silence the guns. Congolese authorities are calling for sanctions against Rwanda, which they accuse of supporting the M23. Kigali denies this support. While the UN has condemned Rwanda's involvement in the conflict, the organization believes that In order to move forward with the discussions, responsibilities must be shared.
There is a responsibility that falls on the DRC itself. They are responsible for the security of the country. This is a sovereign country. The Congolese army must act against the groups.
In the Bushagara camp, the displaced expected more than condemnations from the UN representatives. What all of them want are solutions to the conflict so that one day they can return home.
We are suffering here in the east. In 2007, we already fled the war. Today we are still fleeing. We have been hearing promises from the international community for over 20 years. We hear that they're going to find solutions, but the war still goes on.
Despite the announced ceasefire, clashes continue in the east of the country, particularly in Sake, a town located less than 30 kilometers from Goma. According to the United Nations, in just 1 year, in North Kivu, more than 800,000 people have been forced to flee their villages.
French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Central Africa this month has received mixed reviews, with some skeptical of his latest reset of French relations with the continent. It's part of broader challenges Macron faces in asserting French influence, not just in Africa but also in Europe, amid a fast-changing political landscape marked by the war in Ukraine and Russia's growing influence overseas.
A little music in Kinshasa to end President Macron's four-nation visit to Central Africa in early March. But not everything finished on a light note. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is not a former French colony, some protested Macron's visit. Macron may face an uphill road selling his revamped Africa strategy, one he put to the test in his latest trip to the continent, which also included stops in Gabon, Angola, and the Republic of Congo.
It cannot be seen as a success, this visit, because first, it has shown that France is still very close to authoritarian regimes. And second, President Macron has also shown himself as being once again very arrogant with African head of state.
In February, Macron outlined an Africa policy marked by a reduced military footprint and balanced and respectful relations. In its former colonies, France is competing for influence against countries like China and Russia. Closer to home, French influence is being questioned in the European Union. Some analysts see the war in Ukraine shifting Europe's power center eastward, away from traditional heavyweights, France and Germany, to countries like Poland with tougher views on Russia. These countries and Ukraine have criticized Macron's call for maintaining dialogue with Moscow and considering its need for security guarantees.
We've seen the eastern flank, the Baltics, Poland, etc., really take a lead role in pushing for a strong response to Russia's war in Ukraine. Countries such as France, for example, I wouldn't say they've been sidelined, but some of the policies that the French have had in the past vis-à-vis Russia haven't been popular.
Critics say Macron's push for a more autonomous European defense has failed to gain traction.
The Europeans are very good at talking, particularly the French, but actually, moving from talk to action is a different thing.
Still, other analysts believe France will remain an important player in a Europe defined by more than the Ukraine conflict.
With all the other issues that are fundamental to the EU influence in the world, in fiscal issues, immigration, energy market, relation with the US, this is still something that happens between Paris, Berlin, Brussels, and a couple others. This is not something that had shifted to the east.
The Ukraine war has made defense a top European priority. Analysts like Kusile believe Macron's vision of a more militarily independent EU may ultimately resonate if next year's U.S. elections bring in a leadership less committed to the transatlantic alliance and to investing in a potentially long and costly conflict in Ukraine. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Paris.
It's 29 minutes after 7. We've come to the end of our international news. After the break, we were speaking to Health Promotion Officer on the second edition of the Mbabane Health Fair.
I do the most. Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store. We're good together.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. So lubukela hlelo Kusile Breakfast Show sikuvusele lo sanza kusivulela besishito kusikamhla silabe sikhuluma kabantu njengetindzaba tetempilo njengoba kulempela sonto masipala wasembabane abambisene nelitiko letempilo will be hosting the second edition of the Mbabane Health Fair. Itabe banjele lapha khona emahhovisini amasipala sitakhumula ukuthi ngumsebenzi lona lowaqala kwendeka eminyakeni lophelile. Ilitiko ke masipala kubambisene nelitiko kuzamanje ukuthi bantu bete khona emahhovisini kamasipala batohlola tifo letehlukahlukene tifo efana ekhathi sifo sashukela hypertension kanye netifo letinye letiningi kanye nekugomisa kona kwebantfwana. Sitakhulumisana na head of public health khona kamasipala Mpendulozwane kuva kabantu njengemsebenzi walonyaka lotabanja kiyo nempela sonto nekuva ukuthi ingabe umsebenzi wa last year uhambe kanjani. Sikuvusele Mpendulo siyabonga ukuthi ube nathi sibonge ukuthi masipala again this year abe nalomsebenzi obalekile nakangaka. Kume singangena nje kule fair this year kusibisele nje emuva kancane ukuva ukuthi last year kubuda nje ukuthi ngabe umsebenzi waba imphumelelo because ngiyakhumbula ukuthi vele bensolo memetela nicela abantu ukuthi abeta engabe vele kuhamba kanjani eminyakeni ephelele.
Asibonge kungaba kubingelela sive ngimpendulo wakazwana Sibongo ngehead of public health njengoba sikashito. Okay, kungaba kusho ukuthi last year i-event lesabanayo yaba ngilephumelelayo even though bekunema challenges elitulu but sive sembabane sakhona ukuthi sidinikele etulwini sivele ngalelo langa ngoba nje ngicabanga ukuthi bantu lesabanabo babacishe around 250 and nema stakeholders lebeswa targetile I think kwafika about 2/3 of labantu besibafisile ukuthi bafike. So ngasho nje ukuthi sive sawakhona kwathole ama services and sawathokodela kangangokuba kwase bese kuvakala base banemvuyo ukuthi at least asimane siyende like twice a year or quarterly ngoba beva ngazi ukuthi i-initiative le sidako kakhulu.
Ngaba kuva nje Mendelo ukuthi what is the main purpose of this health fair because isiyadla ukuthi imasipala ninayo clinic futhi bamfubayeta batotfula lisito and awulasimke ukuthi amanye ama services mhlambe ne provider amahala but also ninana ne seni introduce na health fair ingaba vele mhlambe yini lesizathu behind lokuba khona kwale fair.
Okay. Kungaba kusho ukuthi masipala mbamba umsebenzi wakhe lomkhulu coordinator ema health services lapha edolobheni. Nangithi coordinator sibuka lokho ukuthi lema services lesinawo like the healthcare service providers lesinawo are enough in for the people and are well distributed yini. So lesikwendako lana sibita wonke umuntu lo sebenta lapha edolobheni a provide ama services sithi akavele atokhona ukuthi sive sathi ukuthi edolobheni kunanaku and itholakala ngakuphi kuyindlela nje idolobha ukuthi sizame ukuthi libe accessible to everyone so that nomuntu oqhamuka ngaphandle atokhona ukuthi nakafika la ngekhaya edolobheni kube lula ukukhomba ukuthi ini ikuphi. And kuyasita ke nathi ukuthi lidolobha le health fair ngoba siyakhona ku-update our health service directory lapho khona siyakhona kubona ukuthi uhamba kanjani. Lokunye ke lesimcoka ngako ukuthi i-health status yale bantu basedolobheni ibe ngile improved, so sitsazame ngayo yonke indlela ukuthi sihlanganise silethele ama services because lama health services providers noma afikile lapha kule fair aphinza anikela ama services mahala and ukhanza ukuthi into lo khanza ukuthi umuntu akakhona ku afford on the day utithola mahala ngoba kuyaba equality care laba offerisha. So mama nje ukuthi si increase visibility yalama stakeholders and at the same time kunyuke simo sempilo edolobheni sibe ngilesihle.
Yes, speaking of health status nje sembabane vele ngiyabonakala ningumasipala lobathanza kwabantu mbendulo because I think it was 2 years ago noma last year na introduce le outdoor gym. Yes. I think mhlambe ku one of my initiative ukuthi vele bamfu bahlale baphilile bavocavoca umtimba bahlole ngabe vele mhlambe ithini nje inshisekelo yayo le gym nasibuka nje bamba sembabane bayayeni vele bayo gym.
Yeah, yes baya ejimini bantu basembabane and inyalo silidolobha kunelihlelo lesifuna kulisusa lelitawo targeta ikakhulu bantu labadzala. Ngicabanga nje ukuthi sesingasemaphethelweni alo lapho khona sifuna ukuthi sibe nemasheshuli nango visit ukuthi bantu abadzala bayeda lapha bayashukuma and inale lihlelo lathu la public health liyakhona kwenta njani kubahlola bo BP bahlole boshukela but isitaba groupa ngema stages into lesitabe siyisebenzisana nalabanye labakhona lapha edolobheni laba willing to assist lokufaka people laba khanza ukuthi they will offer physiotherapy but nje tandla tethu tivulele to everyone lofuna ukuassista ngalokho. Yebo kona singangikhuluma abantu abadzala and the gym ivulele wonke umuntu lofuna kutivocavoca. Diningena letinto tekutivocavoca lapha edolobheni kunabo park run into letiyayo kanje ukuthi silidolobha nabo siya encourage ukuthi bantu bakusebenzise ngoba silidolobha kakhulu lesikubukile sithi asifocus kakhulu ngala ka prevention ukuthi bantu bangafiki lekuguleni ngoba it become expensive naso khanza ukuthi sesitreat ukugula lesikhona kanti nasikuvimbe ngala siyakhona ukuthi sichubeke nawo ukuthi lo mfu leti imfundiso nalema activities la wendawo ayakhona kumsida lo muntu ukuthi angafiki le ekuguleni more especially nje letinza batabo BP nabo shukela.
Lefe kutaba kwendekani kahle nje kusukela ekseni kuze kube ntambama ngitiphi nje tifu mhlambe lentabe nitelapha on that day.
Oh, okay. Kungaba kusho ukuthi ekseni mamba sitawucala ngema aerobics leswanike one of lama gym lapha edolobheni le active matrix sitawucala ngawo sishukumise umtimba sesinasicethe ama aerobics bese sekuyaqala ke lihlelo into lesitayenda ke lehlelo lethu alisho ukuthi kudathi kungaphela lokho sideke lokho labantu bataba ngathini sitakwenda as a flea market approach kind of thing whereby kutabana lama stores letabe bewela parking emasipala aphinza spillovela kule flea market lapho kuvamisa bane flea market khona emasipala. So lapho khona abantu batabe bahamba bafunza lokho bakufunzako nangabe bafuna ukuthi batreatwe bayakhona ukutreatwa like last year nje bakhanza ukuthi abantu bayakhona kuyana kubo dentist bakhona kubabuka ukuthi amatinyo aba kanjani and some baba ku inhlanhleni ukuthi bakhanze ukuthi bathola ukuthi bayathathwa bayokhipha amatinyo in one of lama facilities lapha edolobheni lokho abayi courtesy yabo bona lapha edolobheni bese ba transporta ke ngetransport yelidolobha. Labanye ukhanza ukuthi sebathola nabo physiotherapy nje but nje this year we'll try by all means ukuthi singete on top of lama services lebeka khona ukuthi abe maningi singabi limited ukuthi okay sinamunye umuntu lo wenda lokho but sithe wonke umuntu lapha edolobheni akavele and so far kuyakhombisa ukuthi ama stakeholders are interested because we are beva lokho ukuthi vele they are coming. Hopefully this time around ngeke lisinethe lidulu ngoba belina last year but
belenta ingeta desele lenabona ukuthi last year yashota. I think ucetha kubekisa nje ukuthi nidawungeta lama services yini lo mhlambe lenibuke ukuthi ningangeta lokho ningazana ngiphumelela kuko last year.
Okay, last year nje sabane problem ukuthi beside lebe bascreena bo cervical cancer nabo breast cancer but we managed to talk to ama service providers lawo la khona itabe khona lutabe bakwenda lokho ukuthi khona ukuthi kuscreeneke letinto tabo cancer kungafocus only on the education part but kwendiwe le screening lesingisona naso si part of i prevention.
Alright, kube sesicetha nje Mendulo bami labadzala bona ngiyadlo ukuthi vele bami labadzala baye bathole special treatment kukhona yini ukuthi mhlambe kutaba ne-transport yokuthi babalanze ingabe kuhamba kanjani futhi
Hayi no ngasho ukuthi lidolobha nalonyaka litawuchubeka kanjalo silidolobha siyaye sithande ukuthi lesicalile singagcini lesitakwenza nje sitawuhamba kule tindzawo letiladolobheni sihambe kuma strategic point because phela masikhuluma ngedolobha sikhuluma ngale city center sikhuluma nangalama location konke ledulu bomahwala itawuhamba nje ikhumbi but ke information yokuthi batayimelaphi batayithola kubona abacocoteli because sisebenzisana nabacocoteli bethu leyo transport nje silungiselela abantu labatsala nalabo abantu laba khanza ukuthi abakhona kutendakala kahle into labo laba disabled nabo stawa transporter kufika leka masipala basitakala ephinze sibathathe sibabuyisele emuva sengabagcizelela nje ukuthi sive side more especially labantu labatsala nabafuna ukuchecka boshukela bete bangakadli bathi baphathele ingcamo kuthi nabacetha kuchecka lo shukela bayakhona kudla we'll try ukuthi sicale ngabo fast batokhona ukuthi bangalambi isikhathi lesithe
njengoba abantu labadzala baye mhlambe bayofuna kwelashela different fire cuts mhlambe kuhlole emehlo nemathambo mhlambe labanye batawuthinga lokufakwa amabhandishi netibuko batatfola netibuko nalawo mabhandishi lawo manje batofela kuphela
okay ngaba kusho ukuthi angeke ngithembise per se ukuthi tibuko batatitfola but lengakusho ukuthi bakhona la labadila ngawo emehlo batokhona kubapopola bakhona kuba advisor accordingly and lokuhle ke siphinze sinabo na sinayena lu commission lo yayavamise kuletha lihlelo lakhe nje libe comprehensive lapho khona abalaphako khona and there are lamanye ama facilities la dolobheni I'm just singling out lu commission because yena akekho la dolobheni but wahlale vele angilositako nangabe sinema services lafana nalawo so kungaba kusho ukuthi abede njengoba ngisho na last year people came bebadele ukuthi bato now batopopolo emadinyo noma bafundziswe but bagcine bathola ibonus ekhiphe emadinyo edikhipha litinyo mahala kanye ka private litinyo khanza ukuthi ali imali yakhona idledulu so kungaba kusho ukuthi nje bantu abede bato access ama services and ungakhanza ukuthi baba senhlahleni sekuthola lento tinto ngeke ngithembise ukuthi tibuko batathola but lengikwatiwe ukuthi batalithola lelwadi ngekuthi emehlo abo akanjani and yini letsingekako mhlambe ukuthi basitakala.
Alright, so lastly lemsebenzi this weekend mos khona kamasipala.
Yes.
Okay, baphatha ini khona ama ID kumele baphatha ini bam.
Okay, ngicabanga ukuthi kungaba kuhle vele because tinvincumbini asibhalisa nyalo sesasebenzisa ID and ukuthi labo laba khanza ukuthi bakuma chronic illness like things about shukela double BP siyacela ukuthi basiphathele lamaphepha laba vamsa kwasebenzisa esibhedlela sitokhona kubona ukuthi kusahamba kahle yini singadikhanze sesiphikisa into leshiwo ngudokotela wakhe loyo muntu.
Kulili kudeni libandlululo ngasoka nikamanzini ngiye kuhelpela babani ngalitfola nilisito
lidolobha lasembabane lidolobha lelalunga kakhulu as much city info yabantu basembabane but silidolobha we believe ukuthi anyone lona dolobheni solo walambabane because silidolobha sinathuwe ma population population leyasebusuku yalabantu abahlala lambabane and kunale population yasemini yalabantu labedala dolobheni just to ukuthi batowenda ibhizinisi lithide lokwenda ukuthi babe bantu bethu ngoba phela balethe economy edolobheni so ngasho ukuthi this is open to everyone but nje ke mamba bane citizens sithi akangasaleli ngaphandle because this is something lesayendela bona ifailure yalento lena itaba kusho ukuthi kulimala bona so kuze ibe success sicela ukuthi bedewe ngidingani batokhona kusitakala.
Alright, thanks so much Mendulo siyabonga kakhulu mbuliso themba ukuthi sawutivele ukuthi everyone is invited kepha ke kakhulu nje kakhulu kucelwa wodona takamotita sedolobheni embabane ukuthi tihambe tiyotfola lusito lwetempilo lwamahalaha embabane this weekend ngemcibelo kusukela ekuseni sithathe likhefu nasibuya sikhulumisana naStumo Likhele losuka khona itiko lwetempilo njengoba masipala bambisene nalo litiko.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Asibenzele sinimukele solo sikhuluma ngayo imbabane health fair letawubanjwa khona emahhovisini akamasipala this coming weekend ngemgcibelo kusukela ngensimbi yesiphohlongo ekuseni. Sizivele sinaye lapha health promotion officer Situmolukhelelo soka khona itiko njengoba bezivedile ukuthi masipala ubambisene nalo litiko kuchoba lo msebenzi. Asikumukele babelkhele siyabonga nje ukuthi unathi lo mhla ekuseni kumbe kubuda nje lokuthi vele nini ezilitiko letempilo lo msebenzi obaleka kanganani kini ngoba siyathi ukuthi ezilitiko ndlale vele nihambisa embili indzaba ukuthi abantu abaphume bahambe bayohlala simo sabo sempilo nje ukuthi isime kuphi.
Angibingelele kuwe tsatsethu, ngibingelele nababukele ekhaya. Umsebenzi ubaluleke kakhulu kithi silitiko letempilo ngoba sive sibandi. Ilitiko letempilo linayo imitholampilo kodwa ayikho kuto tonke tindzawo la kunebantu khona. So nakune misebenzi lefana nalo kuba ngumkhono lowengetekile etiko letempilo lowenda ukuthi kufinyeleleke kubantu la khona lolusito lokufikela nelokwelapha nelokunaka abantu emva kokuba sebake batholakala banato leto tifo lutawufinyelela kubo. So kungaba kudumisa nje ukuthi masipala abe nembono lonje siusekela kakhulu dzadzewethu.
Ngabe nje nasikhuluma nje ngale tifo nje leti baliwe ukuthi utabati lapha masipala labo shukela abo hypertension kugomisa kwabantwana kuhlola kwemehlo kwabogogo ingabe vele mhlambe tifo leto mhlambe lesingathi timatima kanganani bale kangana ukuthi vele sitithathele itulu sisende siqiniseko sokuthi vele siyahamba siyahlola sibuke ukuthi sime kuphi nato.
Kumcoka kakhulu tsatewethu kuneluhlangothi nje tiko letempilo lwetifo letingathathelwana ngesilumbi kuthiwa ngama non-communicable diseases nakufishanisiwe kuthiwa nge-NCD. Luyafundzisa luphindze lo-screen kuphindze kube kucucutela kakhulu lamaswati ngoba ukhanza ukuthi lomunye unaso emtimbeni lesifo kodwa akade utawuthuka mhlambe ngesikhathi asashayeka phasi kuthiwa hey bese kuphakame kakhulu ushukela noma bese kwehle kakhulu ushukela. Kungako ke sekukhanza komcoka kuyaye kufike nasekuthenini kuthiwe letinye tato tize tibitwe ngakuthi ngama silent killers. So kuveta emathuba la njengalawa kwenda ukuthi sikhona kufinyelela esiveni ngoba kulokunye kendeka umuntu atalwe naso sifo sibe khona emtimbeni siphute kuveta timpawu ukhanze ukuthi asiyutiveta letimpawu size sende umonakalo. Kulokunye sitivete timpawu ukhanze ukuthi bantu ngekungafundziseki abakhonde timpawu ukuthi bona ukuthi tisho kuthini. So ngiko sitawuthi kumcoka kakhulu lokukhuluma ngato kubo bonke abantu ngekwehlukana kwekukhula kwabo. Kungaba bantwana, kungaba abantu labasemkhatsini lesithi yisha, kungaba abantu labadzala. Kuphindze futhi kuleso simo kukhona ke lesevele baphila nato letifo letifaka ekhatsi boshukela, bo high blood pressure, mhlambe nabo cancer, nabo mental illness. Lokhanza kusibona ke sebakulesigaba lesithi baku management of the condition. lokhanza kuthi mhlambe kutawuba khona la kutawufanele khona kushintshwe amaphilisi noma kukhuliswe isisindo salelo philisi noma lowo muthi. So kumcoka kakhulu lokuthi lo muntu abovela njalo njalo la kunemathuba lafana naleli noma ke emtholampilo noma sengimuphi atokhona kwati kabanti. Labanye kukhanza ukuthi sebangale ngemuva ngoba akusiko ukuthi sidabe sibuke leti ngathathelwana kuphela, kukhona naleti thathelwanako, kukhona nekulimala lokusuke sekwendekile okhanze ukuthi emva kwaloko sekudzinga kwendiwe lokhu lesithi rehabilitation, sekunabo physiotherapy, sekunabo monitoring of lokungahle kube ngama-complications tatsewethu.
Kubuda nje mhlambe kuleto tifo, I think sifuna ukuvala ukuthi vele ngabe kuleto nje letingetekile. I think uvetile nje empendulo ukuthi this year nidaphenze nihlolele nebo cervical cancer. Ingavele mhlambe kubita abantu kusethaphile kanjena bayaphuma yini vele bayakunconoteni ukuthi bangaya esibhedlela noma mhlambe baye kusethaphile so I think nanibuka nje mhlambe emsebentini wa last year vele yini vele labayinconotako bamvu
bantu bayaphuma nakwabekwa nje indzaba yokuthi kunalusito lolu tabalekelela ekuthenini bangagcinzetelwa tifo. Kodwa eminyakeni lophelile kwaba ne-challenge yokuthi isimo selitulu singabe ngilesikahle belina kakhulu. So lama service providers laba khona lamanye aqhamuka ka-private sector, lamanye atabalethwe ngithi silitiko letempilo. Kwenteka indlela yokuthi le setup ibe nawo lamagumbi ukuthi singasithela nase sithele la sikhona khona kufanane nale emtholampilo la suke sisebentela khona. Le ngingagcizelela nje ukuthi bantu bawungwa imphatho lebatayikhanza kulaba labaniketa lolusito. Le thina nje siluhlangothi letekufundisa nekuthuthukisa ngetempilo siyacucutela kakhulu nangala kulama service providers la kithi sing public health if ngayibeka kanjalo thina lesingihulumende ukuthi sijinga phela sibaphathe kahle ngoba kulokunye ukhanza athi mhlambe ngabunyandi bemsebenzi sesiva ngathi lo ngcono nginangi lofuna kwelashwa noma lolo sekadiagnosisiwe sesiva ngathi hayi lona sesikhuluma indzaba lephatheka bese akasaphatheki kahle lolothi ngilohlola shukela kanzi ngiyena phela asinciphisela umsebenzi ngoba nasimhlola sikhanza ukuthi usede siyamcucutela ukuthi atiphathe ngendlela letawenda ukuthi kungafiki la angaba khona naye lo shukela noma nasimhlola simkhanza ukuthi unaye ukhanza ukuthi usesesigabeni la khona kusengasebenze kangcono kunangesikhathi ukhanza ukuthi sekuchakele naletinye tifo. So bayajabula kakhulu bantu nakunemisebenzi letawubenda bahloleke noma bete letifo ngoba ukhanza ukuthi vele kulokunye baye bangathanzi lamalayini na utawufika emtholampilo khanze ukuthi lesikhathi senta ukuthi ahlale mhlambe isikhathi lesithe ngoba kunyenti bantu. So nakunje ukhanza ukuthi ngoba kunengi nangabe ngidawukhanza lana kusenelayini ngidawuya la kusede khona ngithi nangisuka ngale ngibuye ngala ngikhanze selingcono lelayini kuba ngidawuthi supermarket le yenda ukuthi bajabule kakhulu bantu sengabacucutela nje ukuthi mhlambe naletinye tinkampani naletinye tindzawo mhlambe tingaba ngamadolobha tingajinge tiwuthathe lo mbono wambabane sikhone kuhlanganisa tandla silekelelane ukuthi sifinyelele kuso sive.
Okay. Ngoba nje sesiya ngasemaphethelweni kubuda nje babelikhele ukuthi ngaphandle nje kwalokuthi vele bamatabe belashwa kukhona yini i-segments lapho khona mhlambe batabe bafundziswa ngibekise nje spendwa 10-15 minutes bambafundiswa nge-cervical cancer noma nge-breast cancer noma mhlambe nje vele bayalashwa nje kuphela nje kudulo tabakhulumisa
kunengi lokwenteka kwatsatewethu kunembhobho noma ke kune-PA system la khona lo mchubi luhlelo uyakhona uyati ukuthi kunabo bani ama-service providers la sakhona. So kusuka kuyinye nangayinye indzawo kusuka umuntu athole lithuba lekusho ukuthi thine siluhlangothi loluthintsana nendzaba lenje afundzise lapha aphindze akhombe lokuthi bakanekise ngakuphi lapha emabaleni amasipala nane ukuthi bakanekisile nje sito luni lebalunika ngalelo langa ngetulu kwaloko bakanekise kuphi nendzawo lambabane noma emtholampilo longwahulumende lokhona lambabane so lokho kwenta ke ukuthi labantu bathi bevela mpopeni ukuthi lukhona nelusito lonje bahambe ke baye khona kanjalo ekugcineni kwako konke bayafundziseka labantu baphindze bakhonjwe lokuthi lolusito lukuphi bese ke sekuba sekuthenini ke nangabe kubita sibelashwe sebayafika ke lapho la kulashwa khona befike ke belashwe nangabe ke kubita ukuthi mhlambe bese ukwentiwa lokulesithi referral lo sekutawusho ke kulomuntu njengoba simo sakho sesikhanza sinje qhubeka mhlambe nasevikini lelitako uye sesilemtholampilo la sisebentela khona lokho ke sekutawuba kuchubela lolusito embili la utawukhanza khona ukuthi lo muntu mhlambe bekangeke asitakale kuphelele ngalelo langa.
Ngiyavakala sibonga kakhulu babelikhele sisema ukuthi nebabukeli bayakhuthateka ukuthi bahambe bayehlola simo sabo sempilo mahalaha kulembela somvuo emahhovisini akamasipala lapha eMbabane kusukela ngesimbi esiphohlongo ekuseni asibahlete makethe sibuye sitavala hlelo. Two minutes before 8 o'clock silvana lapho hlelo lethu lomhla ekuseni sibonge kakhulu ukuthi ekhethe ukuvuka nathi lomhla hlelweni sethembele ukuthi kuningi lokufundzile kulandzela ukuthi bese sona nje sanze salwadi ngadoda tempilo kubaleka ukuthi uhlole isimo sakho sempilo sikhulumile ke nelunga lenhlangano ye kidney chronic kidney support foundation akhuluma kabanti nje ngesifo setinso lavedele ukuthi kumanje lapha ekhaya Eswatini nje bantu labalashelwa sona lesifo ba over 250 make makhosi imasilela asichazela nje kabanti ngekuthi bendani bayinhlangano kuzama ukuqoqotela abantu ukuthi batiphathe njani bangadodi khanza sebabulawa ngisosifo setinso sibona ukuthi nibe nathi sizama ukuthi nebanelanga lelihle sanibona kusasa nisale kahle.